The Loyang is a premium Tier 7 destroyer, and a unique one, being the very first Pan-Asian ship to debut in this game. Hello, I am Xarkun, and this is World of Warships Legends. Today we're going to take our first in-depth look at the Loyang, which is one of two campaign reward ships for the ongoing October 2021 campaign. Once you reach the end, you can choose between Loyang and Friesland, and we've already talked about Friesland, which I said I intend to choose, but there is certainly a solid case to be made for this alternative, which uniquely combines some common features of American and German destroyers into the same package. Loyang is a more utilitarian ship than the Friesland in many ways, and potentially a highly competitive one as well. We'll talk about why later. As usual, we'll go over my mod selection, commander build, and then jump into some gameplay where we'll talk about the stats and how the ship plays. I'll say that I do enjoy the Loyang, but personally I don't think it's as much fun as the Friesland. But it may indeed be an easier ship to actually play effectively. So with all that out of the way, let's begin, and as usual, we'll start off with the mod selection, aiming systems mod 1, propulsion, concealment, and main battery reload in the 4th slot. There's a 5th slot for alternative torpedoes, and we'll talk about the differences between these torpedoes and the stock ones as we get later on into the video. The commander, well, there's only one commander choice, Ding Ruchang, whose name I'm probably butchering. He's a universal commander, like George Dewey, not a dedicated destroyer one, and we'll talk a little bit more about him too as we get into the video. I've got Sims and Bay as inspirations, typical destroyer inspirations for something like the American destroyers. Now, as we get into the game, we should point out that T. Kana, one of the community managers for World of Warships Legends, is in the game with us, playing the Stalingrad. So, shout out to T. Kana. Nice to see him on the high seas. Anyway, let's talk about the Loyang, which is why we're here. The good, the mixed, and the bad, starting off with the good. The consumables on the Loyang are, in my mind, really the highlight, since it is basically an American destroyer that was sold to Taiwan. It gets the long-lasting American smoke screens, but kind of strangely, it also gets the best destroyer hydroacoustic search in the entire game as of this moment. This hydro that the Loyang has detects ships at 5.4 kilometers, and that outranges even the best German destroyer hydro by a couple of hundred meters. It is incredibly useful in conjunction with the long-lasting smoke for holding on to caps, and this combo of consumables, in conjunction with the overall American flavor of the ship, makes it particularly good at contesting the caps and, taking them, which is key to winning games. And that's why I say this is potentially a highly competitive destroyer for game modes like perhaps Ranked. And like all American destroyers, it also gets some of the best maneuverability stats in the game. Very tight 570-meter turning circle and a fantastic 2.7 second rudder shift time. Now, the speed isn't super fantastic at only 38 knots top, and you do have to trade out the engine boost consumable in order to make use of the sonar consumable. So you have to give up the engine boost to get this really, really good sonar, but frankly, I don't see any reason why you would ever want to run the engine boost over the sonar, even if the lack of the engine boost means you can't really get over 40 knots in speed. The sonar is just too good to ever trade out for an engine boost. And basically it's these two consumables, the smokescreen and the sonar, which I think are really the highlights of this ship and really make it good at what it does. The rest is a little bit of a mixed bag. The guns and torpedoes are definitely a mixed bag. On one hand, it essentially has Benson or Fletcher guns, but there are only 4 of them, 127 millimeters in size, and they reload in 2.9 seconds with my commander build and mod selection. So the Loyang really is no slouch in a close-up gunfight, but not having 5 guns does reduce its DPM and makes it a little less likely to stand up well to dedicated gunboats with more firepower. Still, against anything with a slower reload, these guns are a force to be reckoned with. Typical American damage numbers on them too. 1900 HE Alpha Strike with a 7% fire chance, which is actually quite good, and 2200 AP Alpha. Now the torpedoes, you get a choice of torpedoes on this ship. The stock ones are long-range 9.2 kilometer Benson torpedoes that reload in 104 seconds, travel at a pretty slow speed of 55 knots, and have a mediocre 11.6K Alpha Strike. The alternative is the short-range, fast 6.7 km torps that travel at 68 knots, reload in a fairly long 122 seconds, and have a 16.6K alpha. Personally, I'm using the long-range torpedoes as I don't think this ship does well aggressively pushing up to enemies in order to make use of the short-range ones, and the long-range ones are actually quite good zoning torpedoes if you want to zone out a gap or flood a cap with them. I'd say the survivability on this ship is also mixed. 18,760 hit points with the Sims inspiration, fairly middle of the road for Tier 7 destroyers, and it loses out to more dedicated gunboats like the Tashkent, Akizuki, or of course Friesland, so you probably can't trade too effectively with the likes of them, but against other Tier 7 destroyers, well, you do want to look out for these guns, particularly if you catch this thing, it smokes up and you're pushing into it, and it gets you with that hydroacoustic search. It'll be able to see you, and if it's concealed in smoke, you won't be able to see it. So even if it doesn't have 5 guns, they do reload quickly, and they will melt you fairly fast. Now on to the bad of this ship, and honestly, I don't really think there's too much that is bad about this ship, except for, in my opinion, the commander choice. As the only Pan-Asian ship in the game, it comes with only one commander choice, as you've seen, and for some reason it's that universal type commander like George Dewey, rather than a dedicated destroyer commander like, Halsey. This universal commander isn't necessarily bad, but his skills, being a universal commander, are pretty generic. His base trait might be good for some ships, since it reduces the reload of, I think, the main guns by a certain percentage, but if you're looking to get one of these destroyers in order to get a new commander with a good base trait for inspirations on your build, I would say that Swirsky is by far the superior choice. So, in terms of going after one of these ships for the commander, I think you want Swirsky. I don't think you want this Ding Ru Chang guy. So I see the Loyang as filling the role of the typical American destroyer, taking caps and countering enemy destroyers. In fact, I think it really, really excels at this role, despite the fact that it does not have access to the RPF indicator via Twist and Track or Perceptive. The excellent smoke sonar combo makes it very dangerous to enemy destroyers within a cap circle, though, and thus the ability to control caps makes Loyang, in my mind, a very competitive destroyer that can give its team a hard edge in terms of their ability to win games by playing objectives. I don't think the damage output with the torpedoes or the guns is especially high, though. But that's okay, because this ship really isn't about farming damage. You can do very, very well in it without doing a huge amount of damage, as I am going to do in this game. You can see out there that we have taken the Bravo cap. After taking the Charlie cap, we did have to disengage from it since the majority of the enemy team was pushing in. But now that we've taken Bravo, we do intend to hold it. And there's our zoning torpedoes, by the way, hitting the, whatever that was, the Mogami or the Miyoko out there. You can see the Alpha Strike is pretty anemic, though, so don't expect too much damage, even against enemy cruisers. But this Udaloy out here, brand new tech tree ship on the Russian destroyer line. We'll be taking a look at that soon, too. He's pushing into the Bravo cap to try to come pick a fight with us, I guess. And this is a huge, huge mistake on his part. We can see Tikana out there going toe-to-toe with the Alaska and the Massachusetts in his Stalingrad. I think he thought he was going to be able to take both of them out, but he said RNG betrayed him. And so he's going to end up going down. But that's okay. We're still going to be able to win this game quite easily, particularly when this Udaloy pushes into the cap. Torpedoes already back up, so we're going to launch them at the Atago. But there's the Udaloy. Now, unfortunately, we are going to beach on this island, but we have our smoke screen, which lasts for a very long time, and we're able to pop that sonar. And as that Udaloy pushes in, we can see him. He can't see us. Thus, the efficacy of the smoke sonar combo being very, very, very effective when destroyers push into you. This Udaloy has no chance. We've got him spotted, our teammates shooting at him. Combined with our firepower, we're able to take him out easily. And that removes, honestly, the best hope that the enemy team has of winning the game. Doing a little bit of farming on the Atago out there before he vanishes. Now we will proceed to exit this smoke screen. There are only 3 enemy ships left alive on the enemy team right now, and basically this is a pretty much guaranteed win, barring any outrageous potato moves from our team. And in fact, we are going to make a little bit of a potato move ourselves, but we've done our job thus far, and I feel like this destroyer is really all about doing the job of the destroyer, which is ultimately to take capture circles and defend against enemy destroyers or counter enemy destroyers. It excels at doing both things because ostensibly this is an American destroyer with supercharged German hydroacoustic search. And that is, as you've seen, that is a potent combination indeed. I do think this would make a very good ship for ranked, and I think in terms of using it to effectively win games, this ship is probably easier to play than the alternative Friesland. So that may be a reason that you might want to choose it over the Friesland. I wouldn't go so far as to say one of these ships is objectively better than the other. They're both just very, very different animals. This Loyang is more like your classic destroyer playstyle, whereas the Friesland is a very unique ship that really has no parallel in this game. But it does have the downside of having no torpedoes, and that can make it perhaps a little harder to use. Actually, almost certainly a little harder to use. Here we potato around the island and get spotted by this Alaska, which, you know, that's not great, but being that he's the only ship left alive on the team, our mistake here really, really doesn't matter. And we're going to see if we can't maybe kill him with our torpedoes before the game ends. Of course, we are spotting him for our entire team, and he's going to give broadside to them, so that's going to make it quite difficult for him to survive for much longer. I think he might end up taking us out, or we might end up taking him out. You can see when I switch to AP there against his broadside, you know, it's pretty good results. I'm sure you could do more damage in this ship, but again, I don't think this ship is about farming incredible amounts of damage. It's about doing what it takes to effectively win the game, which I think we did pretty well here. Good example of it, 2600 base XP. We actually top Tikana on the leaderboard, which is quite nice. Pretty happy about that. So there's a look at the Loyang. Hope you enjoyed it. If so, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. And I will see you next time. Goodbye.